Half of every dairy herd that has ever existed was born male. Not a handful. Half. And a male cow cannot produce a single drop of milk, ever. Which means every glass of milk you've had in your entire life depended on an animal. The dairy industry had almost no use for the moment he was born. So, where did he go? You've had milk your whole life. When was the last time you thought about the male half of every single dairy herd that had to exist for that milk to exist at all? Every glass of milk you drink came from a cow that gave birth. That's not optional biology. It's the only way mammals produce milk. But a cow only gets pregnant, on average, about once a year, and roughly half of every calf crop born on a dairy farm is male. The answer starts with one basic fact that reshapes the entire industry around it. Male cattle cannot produce milk. Only females can, and only after they've given birth themselves. A dairy farm's entire business model depends on a continuous supply of female calves growing up to replace older cows in the milking herd. But biology doesn't cooperate with that need cleanly. Calves are born in a roughly 50-50 sex ratio, the same as most mammals, and researchers estimate a herd only needs replacement females from about 60% of its lactating cows to sustain itself. That means, in any given year, roughly half of all calves born, essentially every male, plus a portion of the females, aren't needed for the one job the farm actually exists to do. This wouldn't be a serious problem if male dairy calves were simply good, efficient meat animals instead. But just like with egg-laying chickens, dairy cattle have been selectively bred for one extremely specific purpose for so many generations that they've become biologically specialized in a way that works against a second use. Breeds like the Holstein, and especially the Jersey, prized specifically for the volume and richness of milk they produce, have been bred over decades for traits like a slight, lean frame, and an udder built for maximum lactation, not for the kind of rapid muscle growth that makes a beef animal profitable. A male Jersey calf, genetically built from generations of milk-focused breeding, tends to grow slowly, put on relatively little usable meat, and convert feed into muscle far less efficiently than an animal from a dedicated beef breed like Angus or Hereford. Raising him to slaughter weight can cost more than the meat he eventually produces is worth. If small forces quietly reshaping the world around you is the kind of thing you find fascinating, this whole channel is built on it, so hit subscribe and stick with me. Because the next part is where it gets genuinely strange. So the industry ends up with a specific category of animal, sometimes called bobby calves, referring to male dairy calves typically under 30 days old, who are, in the industry's own terminology, surplus to requirements. Historically, and in some regions still today, the most common outcome for these calves was euthanasia within days of birth, simply because no profitable pathway existed for them. In the United Kingdom, in 2015, industry data showed roughly 19% of male dairy calves, an estimated 95,000 animals that year alone, were killed shortly after birth for exactly this reason. Not because anything was wrong with them, but because the economics of a milk-optimized breeding system left no efficient use for a slow-growing male calf. This has produced real public controversy, and the dairy industry has responded with the same kind of technological fix chicken producers turn to with in ovo egg sexing. It's called sex semen, a technique that sorts bull sperm by the sex chromosome each individual sperm cell carries, allowing farmers to artificially inseminate cows with semen heavily weighted toward producing female calves, sometimes achieving accuracy rates well above 90%. The logic is identical to sexing chicken eggs before they hatch. Intervene earlier in the biological process, so fewer unwanted males are born in the first place, rather than dealing with the surplus after birth. The catch, also familiar from the egg industry, is cost and reliability. Sex semen is more expensive than conventional semen and produces somewhat lower conception rates, which means adoption has been gradual rather than universal, and plenty of dairy operations, particularly smaller ones, still use standard breeding and still produce the same roughly 50-50 split of calves every year. There are other pathways besides euthanasia, and they mirror the chicken industry's just eat the males anyway solution closely. Male dairy calves can be raised for veal, typically slaughtered around 8 to 10 months old, or raised longer, sometimes 18 months or more, to become a category of beef sometimes marketed specifically as dairy beef. Both pathways exist and are used, but both remain economically weaker than raising a dedicated beef breed from birth, which is precisely why so many male dairy calves still end up in the lowest value category of the system rather than a thriving parallel meat industry. It's worth remembering that cattle, like chickens, weren't always split this cleanly into single-purpose animals. For most of agricultural history, a single cow or ox served multiple roles across its lifetime, pulling plows and carts as draft power, providing milk while lactating, and eventually becoming meat, leather, and tallow once its working or milking years ended. Specialization, breeding one line of cattle purely for maximum milk output and another purely for maximum meat output, is a comparatively recent development, driven by the same industrial-era logic that split chickens into egg breeds and meat breeds. Once you're producing animals at massive scale, every trait that isn't optimized for your specific product becomes a cost you can no longer justify carrying. That single shift, from animals that did everything to animals bred for one thing, is the hidden engine behind almost every strange fact about the food on your plate. And it's exactly what this channel exists to unpack. So if that idea stuck with you, subscribe and drop a comment with what surprised you most. So the honest answer to where all the male calves go is the same uncomfortable answer as the missing rooster brothers. Some are raised for meat, some are killed shortly after birth, and a growing number are simply never conceived in the first place, thanks to sex semen technology quietly reshaping which sex gets born at all. None of it happened because male cattle became less valuable as animals. It happened because an entire industry got built, breed by breed, generation by generation, around extracting one specific product as efficiently as physically possible. And a calf born the wrong sex for that one product, healthy, ordinary, and completely unremarkable in every other way, ended up on the losing side of an economic equation he had no part in writing.